Hey, Mike.
Hey, Mike. Who are we talking to today?
Today we're going to talk to Josh Steffen, who this is a first for me because this is somebody that I don't know. This was a person referred to us from Nathan Hewitt in episode 4. So we'll find out how he knows Nathan and what kind of music production and gear and all that fun stuff he's into.
Sounds fun. Well, at least we have that in common. I don't know him either, so this will be fun.
Mike's on mics. Yeah.
Live from New Jersey. It's Saturday evening. Josh Steffen, very nice to meet you. I'm Mike Nimmix.
Mike
Nice to
Dow.
meet you guys.
There's Mike Dow, and appreciate your time in this. This is going to be really cool. First off, let's get into this because Nathan Hewitt referred you to us, said, there'd be a good conversation. How do you know him?
Nathan and I used to be on IRC years ago, basically downloading cracked software.
All right, then.
It's kind of how we got into this. It helped us learn music production and sequencing, everything else. Because if if I'm 15, 16 years old, how the hell can I afford any of it?
Yeah. Neither Mike nor I ever did anything like that. Ever.
Don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys did. I'm assuming you have. You guys know gear and everything else. So
It seems to be a running theme with everybody we've talked to.
With the same, if I could have afforded it, I would have bought it, but I couldn't, and I wanted to learn how to use it, so I did this. So
yeah.
And we buy stuff now because we can, so that's good.
I heard you guys mention Jersey. Are you from New Jersey?
No, I was just saying live from New Jersey. It's Saturday afternoon because that's where you are. You're
Yeah.
You're our first little out of
I
state.
thought you were talking about
person.
your location.
Mike is in East Austin right now, and I am west of Austin and Dripping Springs. So
I'd love to move to Texas.
well, there's room.
Okay. I mean, it's neat, but I'm sure Jersey's cool too.
Yeah, you know what? Like when the revolution comes, the Civil War happens, I'd rather be in Texas.
It's weird. I was just thinking that it kind of feels Civil War-y.
Yeah,
Kind of has that pre-taste to it, if
It
there is
does.
such a thing.
Yeah.
Well, that just means good songs are coming on the way. So
Oh yeah. Josh.
Yeah.
There seems to be a moment in everybody, whenever we talk to people, there's a moment in everybody's life. It's sort of a paradigm shift, kind of
Yeah.
before the music touched your, reached in and grabbed a hold of you, and then after. Do you remember that moment?
No. No. I think it's always been there.
Good. Okay. So just always just part of you.
Yeah. I think it's always been part of
Came
me.
into the world and it was just like, I'm attached to music.
I think so. And I think it had a lot to do with like the fact that my father was a musician as far as piano goes. My mother was, they constantly had music going on in the house while I was in the womb, and she thinks it has a lot to do with it. And it might, there's a critical development stages, so who knows?
Yeah.
So whose idea was guitar? Was that something you just wanted to rock out, or
Picked up an acoustic and kind of noodled around on it and thought, wow, I'd kind of like to play this. I think I tried playing. I was like 4 or 5 years old. I picked up violin, that didn't stick. Picked up saxophone, that didn't stick. And I just thought, well, let me try guitar. And that stuck.
by your wall back there? Clearly, it's not a thing you're into anymore.
I'll have to show you one of them. I actually refinished one of them. I do that on the side.
Very nice.
It's cool. It's got this color shifting thing going on. You move it, it shifts from like blue to green to like purple, and pretty cool.
Definitely. I'm also seeing 4 keyboards around you. I'm pretty sure there's more.
There's more. Yeah.
Clearly, you at some point got interested in electronic music and synthesizers and things like that.
I was playing in bands from when I was like 13 years old. I just got tired of playing in bands. I got tired of everybody disagreeing with each other and all the crap that comes along with it. I just wanted to write music, write songs, be like, here are the songs, let's learn them and play them. So one day I got tired of it and I just walked out. I said, I'm done, guys. I'll see you later. And from there, I tried to figure out how this could be done on the computer with synthesizers. And I'm like, 15, 16 years old. So we're talking like 1991 or something like that, 92. I think we went to Sam Ash and looked into different software, talked to some guys there. Um, my father, for a living, did all sorts of stuff with the computers. So around that time, I think the Pentium still came out, the first Pentium. So we built a computer around the Pentium, bought Cakewalk, and I was lucky enough that he could afford to grab me a Kurzweil K2000. So I started learning. It was probably like the worst synthesizer to ever start out with because it's so complicated and deep. I mean,
It's pretty deep. Yeah.
the manuals, there were two manuals, and each of them were the size of a phone book.
Yeah. Yeah. Hold on. Just this.
It's
I mean,
crazy.
there it is. There's
The
the,
manual, yes.
yep. There's one of them.
Yeah, then there's the second one.
And then here's the thicker second one.
There
Yep.
you go.
Yeah.
Manuals are no joke, man.
Yeah.
And that synthesizer, honestly, was way, way, way ahead of its time when it came out. There was nothing else there that it could do what it did. There was no such thing as virtual analog yet, but the K2000 had built-in wave generators.
Yeah.
Looked like an analog synth. It was
Yep.
crazy. And it's still like, if you get like the Kurzweil Forte, I have a Forte sitting here, Forte 7. If you get the Forte 7 or the K2700, they're still way ahead of their time.
Yeah.
Genius.
Have you ever gone down the rabbit hole of the guy Kirschweil?
Yeah,
And
Ray
like,
Kurzweil.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
and the singularity and all that fun stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's a good
Yeah.
time.
So I'm not surprised. It's so, like such a deep, cool synth that came from the brain of that guy.
So that was your first synth? Was
That
the
was my first synth. My second synth was a Nord Lead 2. I still have that. Yeah, I love that synth. I'll probably never sell that. What I have now, I'll never sell because I sold stuff that I regret selling, like a JD 800, a Juno 106, a Kawai K5000, which was a really cool additive synth, and I should have never sold any of them.
JD800 was on my wish list. That was like the console, the enterprise, man. Everything at your
It's awesome.
fingertips.
Yeah, and I think I bought it for like $750 back then, and the Juno 106 I bought for $450 with a big anvil calzone case.
We used to have one of those. Oh, wait, no, I still have that Juno 106.
Yeah, I don't ever sell it.
I forget what the mechanism was, but you could dump. It was kind of like SysX, but back then, but it was like a dump to tape.
Oh
And I
yeah.
found online somebody had an MP3 that you could download and record to cassette and then reload the factory sounds onto the Juno 106. And I'm going, that's gold.
That's a great
Yep.
idea. Put it into MP3 and then pop it on a cassette.
Yeah, it was greatness. So that's cool.
That is very cool. I never would have thought of that for like the old synths that use tape. Just upload it all in MP3 format.
Yeah, that was in the late 90s or early 2000s, I think, when I was trying to find an original manual I could print out, and somebody had this. I go, and if you want the sounds, here's a tape dump to MP3. And I'm going, yeah, brilliant.
That's awesome.
Y'all might remember this, but y'all remember the old Commodore 64 computers?
Oh, yeah.
You could load stuff off of tape. Well, they have MP3s now of their programs that you can load directly into. You
Wow.
play back the MP3 straight into your Commodore 64, and
That's cool.
That's beautiful. Same concept.
yep, same thing.
You did guitar, you were buying synths, but there's a period in there that you were doing band stuff. Did any of that ever go anywhere with recordings or anything like that, or just
No.
band politics got in the way and you said, screw it, I'm going to go be a composer?
Yep, pretty much. Yeah, I mean, we did like bars and stuff like that, but never recordings or anything.
Okay, so then bring me into what I'm going to call the bands that you've had relevant success with, as far as the things that are on Spotify. And
Yeah, the Hell in Reverse thing is just me, just industrial music. Wound up signing them to a small independent label out of Belgium called Alpha Matrix, and they're basically worthless. I signed on to like a 3-record contract with them. I gave them 2. The second album I gave them, they did absolutely nothing with it. They didn't promote it. They did nothing. And I begged them to. I actually had to beg my label, who takes 50% of everything, to promote it. Now, honestly, if you're going to take 50% of everything, you should be using that money towards promotion. They did nothing. I had these 2 albums I wrote in like a month and a half. It was the Fire Ritual stuff, the Apocalypse and Doomsday. And I was on a roll. I wrote everything in about a month and a half, recording it, mastering it, and I was going to release it through them as Halo in Reverse. Just a completely different thing because I'm honestly sick of industrial music. I can't even listen to it anymore, except for some of the old classic stuff like Skinny Puppy or Knights of Reb. But I just can't. Newer industrial music it all sounds the same to me. So I want nothing to do with it anymore. So I told these guys, look, um, they're excited. They wanted the 2 albums, and I realized they're gonna do nothing with it like they did in my last album. So I emailed them and I told them, I said, look, I got your emails about releasing this. I'm not giving it to you guys. I'm going to release it on my own. And the reason for that being is that my last album, you did nothing with it. You didn't promote it. And then you complained that the sales were low and you lost money on it. Why are you taking 50% if you're not going to promote it? I said, in order to not screw up the contract, I'm just going to release it under a different name. And of course, I didn't hear anything back. There was no reply. So
Sure.
But the thing about that contract is there's no specific dates in which I owe them something.
Right.
So I could just never give them anything until I'm dead and they can't do anything about it. I just can't use the name Halo in Reverse.
Or you can do a John Cage and just give him
That's what I was
tracks of
thinking.
silence.
12 tracks of silence.
I knew there was a story there, but I wasn't sure of it. So I did listen to everything you sent, and the Halo in Reverse stuff clearly has an era surrounding it.
Yeah.
I'd put it in there with that early kind of industrial rock stuff. The production's great.
Don't say anything. Who do you think you sound like?
Yeah, I know. I hear it all the time. God. Yeah, I hear it all the time.
He who shall not be named.
I was blown away whenever I heard it. I was pretty sure it was him.
That's pretty funny.
No, it's a compliment. You have a very good voice, and in some ways, I would say that it's very much like that, except maybe a little more accessible. You're probably going to hate this, but a little more toe tappy.
That's cool.
Yeah,
I was going to say a little more than just angry.
Yeah. It's like if given the right context, I think that it could be more popular than that guy who's out there.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
I don't know why we're not saying that, but in that regard, Mike and I have talked to other people about getting into sequencing and how there were bands that we were influenced by that we were listening to at the time, and just kind of as Mike called it, a rite of passage of deconstructing somebody's song that you like and recreating it, even if it's note for note, just to learn that process. Did you get into things like that?
What do you mean, like doing cover songs to kind of learn sequencing?
Yeah.
No, I never did, actually. It's actually a good idea, but I never did that.
Wow. Okay.
You seem to have honed your craft without doing the thing that most people do.
Yeah, I didn't dive into covers until later.
Tell me about what you remember from learning to sequence. I know the K2000 has an onboard sequencer, but you said you got Cakewalk and built a computer. So
yeah,
was it just really going down that route and using the K2000 as a sound module?
Yep.
And I guess a controller.
I think I'd probably tear my hair out if I had to use the sequencer on the K2000. I mean, I would eventually be okay with it, but if knowing there's DAWs out there at the time, I was just like, this is much easier. It's much more graphical. It's because I'm a visual person.
Yeah,
right.
So having Cakewalk is a lot easier for me.
If I say 32 fat tracks in the palm of your hand, do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
Okay, there's a sample that came with the K2000 and a bunch of their discs, and one of it was some, I don't know, hip hop voice saying 32 fat tracks in the palm of your hand, because I
don't think I got that with mine.
They're trying.
I got the classic analog floppy disks, but I don't think I ever had that one. I don't know.
You can download them all the KRZ files are available for free on the internets. So if you want to go and look them all up,
I found mine actually. I found that I think it came in like 3 boxes. I found all 3 boxes. Some of the floppies didn't work, but I did find them. Kurzweil is definitely my favorite. Their stuff is
What are those three on? I guess that's your left side, maybe your right side.
this
Yes,
side.
yes.
On the bottom is a Korg Kronos. That is a Behringer DeepMind 12.
Uh-huh.
Behringer Monopoly. Over here is a Roland TR8S. In front of me is the Jupiter 8X. On this side is the Forte 7, the Kurzweil Forte 7. Then an AN1X, a Nordlead 2. And over there is a Korg Op 6. And there used to be a Matrix 1000 in the rack, and then I wound up selling that for a guitar, which I regret now. After that, I was like, I'm never selling anything again. I'm done selling synths because every single time I regret it.
Yeah, I'm like, I always go get more money somewhere else.
Yeah.
I actually have a couple of questions. I want to talk about evolving your home studio. But like, if you started with Cakewalk, at what point were you like, wait a second, I don't need to buy Pro Tools. I can build my own for cheaper.
Mm.
Or are you a Pro Tools guy and I don't know what I'm
No,
talking
I'm not
about?
a Pro Tools guy. I actually hate Pro Tools. I hate the company. I hate everything about Pro Tools. I used to work at Sam Ash when I was, God, when did I start working there? Probably 19 years old. I think I worked there for about 3 years. Back then, the different reps from the software companies would give you the software for free. They want you to, they want you to be into it. They want you to learn it, know it, because that way you can sell it. So I asked for a copy of, the latest Cakewalk. I asked for a copy of Logic Audio. It was eMagic at the time, owned it. I asked for a copy of Pro Tools, and I asked for a copy of Cubase. And I tried them all, and the one thing I landed on was Cubase just seemed to make the most sense to me. It was very intuitive. It was like at the time, the mix console with your inserts and your sends, it made sense like an actual mix console. So everything flowed real well intuitively with Cubase. So I went with Cubase, and that's probably what I've been using ever since.
Are you on 13 now?
Yeah,
Okay.
just buggy as shit. And if I have to go back and do sequencing, I have to open up 12 in order to do it.
I'm hearing that from a lot of people.
I'm going through some growing pains myself.
You've got your drop-down menu where you can choose your patches for your synth from your patch script. Because I just sit around and make patches all day long and save them. So I've got a bunch of presets that I've made that I used to start out with. But if I go down to choose one in the drop-down menu, I can choose it, the drop-down menu disappears. So I can't like scroll through them to go through my different sounds. It just doesn't, it's broken.
Right. We call that doom scrolling, and we love doing it where you can just highlight it and hit the down arrow and
Exactly.
basically choose your font, right?
Yep.
And you're like, nope, that's not it. Oh, this is the one I'm going to make my song with today.
Exactly. Yeah. Like I'll let it sit on, I'll let the melody line sit in a loop and just kind of scroll through my sounds that I've created and figure out what starting point I want to go with.
Yeah.
Can't do it in Cubase 13. I thought maybe it was Windows, so I did a completely fresh installation of Windows, installed all of my software again, still did it. Did it again. Fresh installation of Windows. This time didn't allow the Windows updates to install. Maybe it was a Windows update. It's still doing it. So now I've got to take video of it and upload it to the Cubase forum because I don't want to hear, well, we were unable to repeat this bug here. I want them to see it. I want the evidence to prove to them this is what's funky about this and it's screwed up.
You probably know this, but I'm going to say it anyway. There's a guy, his name is Greg Ondo, and he is kind of the big sales guy for Yamaha, for Steinberg here in the United States. Every couple of days, he does a live stream on YouTube where you can just, he just jumps on and he's basically like, just text in your question about how you do this in Cubase, and he'll try and get to it before. Well, you know how comment sections can get, right? So you just throw your question in there if you can get there soon enough. But
right.
Yeah, go find maybe I can find it and send it to you.
Ondo, I'm gonna write it down.
Yeah, Greg Ondo, Ondo. In fact, I remember that dude from the first time that Cubase VST ever showed up.
Really?
He was at a Guitar Center in Dallas, and he was like, "Hey, do you like Pro Tools, or do you like the idea of Pro Tools?" what if I told you that you could move your audio around like and do like groove quantizing with real-time audio? And I'm like,
Right.
what? You're full of lies. Show me. Yeah. And he did, and it was great. I remember, and he was funny, because they have the scissor tool and the glue tool. I still
Yep.
remember one of his stupid jokes. He's like, scissors for cutting, glue for sniffing. Yeah.
I think I met that guy at the Guitar Center in North Houston in spring, which is I was a registered Cubase customer with, I don't know, version 3 or 4, and VST was coming out, or it was VST 24, whatever that kind of version was, and
yeah, the 24-bit version. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I believe from
yeah, you could come and they had this audio ASIO, physical card, and the VST 24, and it was a bundle of kind of stuff like that, and that's where that free filter came, that little mastering suite.
It came with WaveLab.
It was WaveLab 2. And so if you go and you sit through his little spiel, then all of a sudden this whole bundle, I don't know what the price was, but let's say it was $400, where independently it would be $1,200.
Yeah.
And so I drove to Houston, went and did this. It was like on a Tuesday night, it's raining, blah, blah, blah. And I did that. And I spent $400 on that I didn't have. Credit card, that's not real money. Don't worry about that. And then that's how I got all that legitimate stuff that I would never be able to get. And then when the upgrades come out, it's $79 to upgrade to version 3, or $39, or
it's not so
whatever.
bad.
And it was great. But I think that was the same guy.
Yeah.
Greg Ondo. Huh?
Yeah.
So definitely check him out, because you can be like, hey, he uses it, so he understands your perspective of, hey, I'm trying to scroll through sounds while I'm looping a sequence on this one part to find the right thing, and I just want to close my eyes and hit the down arrow, and he'll be like, what? That doesn't work? We'll take care of that,
Yeah, and he knows the ins and outs. Like he'll tell you which preferences to turn on or off to make that work, if that is something that you can do. All right, so you have all these keyboards hooked up. Are they all wired through MIDI ports right now? And what is your MIDI IO that you're using to do that?
Yeah, I mean, the keyboards that do have USB MIDI are connected through USB.
Okay.
Use, a USB hub. The Yamaha and the Nordlead 2 are too old to have that.
The old 5-pin MIDI on them?
5-pin MIDI DIN. I actually still have a Steinberg MIDix 8 interface.
So do I.
It still works because the 64-bit drivers. So it works. I have them running through that. You still have one too?
I do, but I'm not Windows anymore. So that's the one that's the MIDix 8, the 8x8. It was like they were like, yeah, this has got like longitudinal something. It's supposed to be tighter MIDI triggers or something at the time. And it's old, and I've since then gone Mac, and so I haven't even tried to plug it in to see if it's Mac compatible or not. I'm mostly in
I
the
don't
box.
see why it wouldn't be.
Yeah, the drivers are 64-bit, so if you get the drivers from Steinberg's site and like the legacy drivers that they don't support anymore,
you'll
be able to get the drivers and it should still work. It's a funny story about that thing. Supposedly the guy who created that was the same guy from Access Virus. They created the Access Virus,
really?
All that stuff. And I think the reason, because I was pissed off when Steinberg all of a sudden just stopped supporting it. Apparently, because they did that, it happened quick. It only happened like a year after it came out.
Yeah, it was pretty new.
Yeah, I think something happened with that guy and him writing drivers, because apparently he's known to do that. He just dropped the Access Virus, went on to another project, and never supported it anymore. Never gave them updates. People complain about it all the time. I see them.
All right, so that's the MIDI side of it. But what about the audio side? I notice your RME now. How did you start? I'm sure it wasn't RME.
Yeah, it was actually RME.
Really?
No, I mean, way back when, it was just whatever came with the computer. It's just like a sound blaster,
Yeah.
But my first real audio card was an RME. It was a Project Hammerfall card. And I think I was working it was a Hammerfall 9652. I was still working at Sam Ash, and I bought that. and I bought a couple. I bought one Alesis AI3, I think it was called. It was an A to D converter, 8 in, 8 out,
Yeah.
24-bit, 48K kilohertz, and that's what I started out with. Like once I actually was able to get real gear.
So my story about going RME is kind of the same. I'd been using VST and Cubase for a while. Did some light pipe. I was a beta tester for a card company out there called Studio or Studio or something
Huh.
like that. Sonorous was the name of the company, and they
I
had
vaguely remember that.
2 light pipe outputs and 2 light pipe inputs. It was basically like the RME card before the
Yeah.
RME card came out, I think. And then I was using other stuff, and I just was like, man, I wish these VST instruments were snappier and all this stuff. And they had just come out with the Grand. I don't know if you remember that
Yeah, I
VST
remember that.
instrument.
Uh-huh.
And so I'm probably asking Greg Ondo at some show that he's at, and I'm like, hey man, what do y'all use? I know it's open up architecture and whatever. And he's like, yeah, no, it's any card you want. It doesn't matter as long as your system understands. I'm like, no.
That's not my
When
question.
y'all write something, like what is in y'all's place? When you go and you're like, oh, here's my home studio rig, or here's my test rig at Steinberg.
Yeah.
What are you using? And
Yeah,
he
what
was like,
specifically?
well, and he really didn't want to answer it, but then he said, well, all right. So when Stevie Wonder came by and played the Grand at this show that they were at, he was playing through an RME. I was like, okay, that's it. All right.
That's
And
where
that
I'm
makes
going.
sense because, you know,
Why not?
Steinberg's German, RME's German, I think. I think they are.
I
And
think so.
and so and they're badass too. Like I've never met.
Their drivers are the best available on the market. I mean, as far as your buffer rates go, you'll get the best, cleanest signal at low buffer speeds than anything else out there.
Yeah, I remember their latency is like 1.5 milliseconds,
Yeah,
which is
That's too much
nuts.
for me.
it's almost nothing. You know what I mean? It's crazy.
I think real live, honest to God, Pro Tools rigs are like 93 samples, and
Yeah,
that's about as fast as you can do it.
yeah,
1.5 milliseconds is nothing.
yeah.
Nobody comes clear. I mean,
Yeah,
usually,
it's just waiting for information. It's
I
like
can actually,
feed
this
me.
RME card that I have, I can actually set this to 64 samples.
oh wow, okay,
Pretty
so they've gotten a
crazy.
lot better.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah,
have a internal card,
Yes.
and how does that are the ports on the card, or is there an external
No,
piece,
there's a
little
it's a
interface?
the card is a MIDI card. So MIDI is I think it's able to run 128 channels.
mhm.
Okay,
Um
And so what's your MADI analog to digital, digital to analog
Converter, it
converter?
is
Yeah.
an SSL Alpha MIDI rack.
Okay.
The MIDI connects through a fiber optic cable. So the
Yeah.
MIDI
okay.
cables are fiber optic, and
So
the
computer card, fiber optic to the interface
yep,
in the rack. Okay, that's
And
what
how
I was
has
many
trying to
one
get at.
cable for both input and output, send and return.
and how many inputs and outputs do you have through that cable to your A to D to A converter
On the
SSL?
SSL is 24 analog ins and 24 analog outs.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
I'm
then what?
debating selling everything and getting a Universal Audio Apollo 16,
Yeah.
which I think I'm gonna do. They're just so damn expensive. You know, like I think they're overpriced.
Sure.
To be honest, I think they're overpriced, which is why I've really been hesitant about doing that swap. But
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see. I'll lose 8 channels, but
Well, I was about to say you're going to lose some channels on that. What is the benefit that
yeah.
you're seeing on there? Is it a different
Um,
rate?
their console software, being able to run their plugins with zero latency.
Yeah.
Okay,
So because we're building a studio in my house, onto it. So I'm gonna open it up for bands to come in and record the
I got you.
mixing here
Okay,
and everything. So to have the console software and be able to run their plugins live
Yeah.
Within their console software is a huge benefit to tracking live bands. And it's a lot easier to use than RME's Matrix.
Yeah. It's
Army's Matrix, I still haven't figured it out. I've owned RME for ages and I still don't understand their Matrix software.
the RME stuff that you were saying that you
Yeah.
had, I also had the little
Yeah. You've got the
9652.
same software.
Yeah. And so it's way it used to be, I haven't fired it up in forever, is there are three mixers, right? And basically it's your live input mixer,
Yep.
your wave playback mixer, and I don't know, and your output mixer or something. And
Yeah.
it's got built-in DSP, so you can do a ton of stuff, and that's great. But it's also like, man, I already have a DAW.
Yeah.
You know, that's where I
Yeah.
want to do it all. I don't need
Right.
an extra mixer.
I mean, the
But
great thing about the RME is the RME card, because of the built-in DSP, it's doing the audio processing. So if you're not monitoring through your DAW, you can monitor through the RME
That's-
mixer and get
that's right.
literally zero latency. There's none.
Sure.
So that's great for live bands, but I could just go with what I have,
Yeah.
realistically, and not have a problem. But I don't know. It's still up in the air. Like now I'm going, nah, maybe I shouldn't. You know, I've been going back and forth with swapping and changing
Yeah.
for like the past 2 months.
Are you sample frequency agnostic, or do you just have one where you're like 48K and I don't have to go any higher or lower than that?
I run at 96. I run everything at 96. That's the highest my A to D converter will go is 96. I think MIDI is limited to 96K.
Yeah. Yeah. We do Dante at UT, and it's just 48. And honestly, 48's been pretty good for a while. Well,
It's pretty standard.
we've released a couple of albums on 48, you know, between when it came out and now. So I feel like there's nothing really wrong with it.
Yeah, I was about to say, call me old, but I think 96 is going to be great. I mean, it's going to get knocked down in the end. You'll still have a better sounding product than starting out at a lower one.
Yeah.
But I think you're kind of just wasting bits after that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
as
the only
far as
reason I
fidelity.
even record at 96 is because of I think everything's going to move to that eventually. People will be
Future-proofing.
buying music on like Blu-rays or something like that, where they'll be able to handle 24-bit 96K. So I figure I might as well start recording it now, and when that does happen, I don't have to upsample or anything. It's done.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the only
Or
reason
go
I
all the way
even
back
do it.
and re-record everything to make yourself a really good mix. Yeah, no, future proof. I love it.
So when did Pro Tools bite you in the ass? What made you hate it so much?
The price gouging.
Oh, okay.
The price gouging. I think you're paying for the name.
They offer less than what the other guys offer, if you ask me. I mean, one of the coolest things about Cubase, it's got a lot of cool things, but the built-in auto tune, even though auto tune is trademarked by somebody else, but the basically being able to fix, you know, I think, and you have to buy that plugin for Pro Tools to have it, or at least you used to, and I think you still do.
I think you just have to. Not only was the software itself expensive, but all the add-ons that you kind of wished or thought or hoped came with it were just that. They were add-ons, and they weren't cheap either.
Yeah.
When it comes to Pro Tools and Avid and DigiDesign, like I cannot rag on those guys enough. Literally, I cannot rag on those guys enough because my buddy had opened a studio he had a whole studio built on off of his house, and he would get phone calls from bands interested in coming in to record. Do you have Pro Tools? No, I don't have Pro Tools. This is what I use. Oh, okay. We want to find a place with Pro Tools. Musicians think in order to make an album that sounds professional, you have to have Pro Tools. Like they're ignorant, completely ignorant to that.
Right.
They have no clue. So a lot of guys that are using Pro Tools, are using Pro Tools because of that.
Right.
And a lot of these guys, because I always hear like, well, why do the big producers use it? And I'm like, there's a reason why big producers still use it. Back in the day, it was the only thing that was available. Okay, where you could have, zero latency with their DSP cards. It was the only thing available. They sunk a ton of money into it. They learned it. They became fast on it. That's why they continue to use it, because there's better stuff out there now. There's much better stuff out there than Pro Tools and Avid's hardware. It's all over the place. There's so much competition. But that's the only reason these guys are still using it, is because they've sunk so much money into it, they don't want to abandon it.
I will say they are an established kind of flagship. Here we are, and they've if you're gonna do sound, film sound,
Yeah.
They kind of cornered that market a little bit.
Yeah.
But you're not wrong. There's free software out there that is as powerful as, or more powerful in some ways than Pro Tools.
Yeah, I mean, I hear Reaper's great. I've never used it, but I know people that do, and they love it. So
Saying all this, I think I'm still a certified Avid Pro Tools instructor, and also for Media Composer, their video editor. And I mean, I can use them, and they're good for a lot of things.
yeah.
But if you got a budget and you'd rather spend your money on ADD converters or mic pre's or microphones or something like that, then there's really no reason to be buying it. I will say one more thing, and this is kind of where Cubase, they could do a lot better. Pro Tools is very backwards compatible. So you got an old Pro Tools song, somebody somewhere can open it up if you can't.
Gosh.
Know?
That is one thing I'm going through with Cubase right now. I've got a bunch of .all and .arr files from early VST days.
Yep.
And, I'm trying to navigate it. There's a SE3.x version, which you can download. But if you don't have a license for it, you can't use it. And that one can do the kind of, you can load up the old school file and save it as a MIDI file and then bring it into 13 or 12. But the problem is, if you don't have a license, you're screwed, and they won't sell you a license because it's not supported software.
Right.
So, and they won't change the software to where it doesn't need a license. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
Shitty.
So I'm like, okay. And it's not totally lost.
You have to build an old computer.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not totally lost. I still have my old VST. I'm going to have to build a 98 box. And I can't do it as a virtual box because I need the physical aspects of it. Maybe I can if I just want to convert the files. Anyways, because I know
that's a good idea.
You could export MIDI files from VST.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think I don't know if you're going to lose. I don't know what kind of information you lose, but I'd get at least what I'm looking for. So it's just a pain in the ass rather than just going, convert.
Right. So, yeah, they should make a piece of software that just converts the stuff, load it in, spits out the new file format.
I'd pay for it.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I'll make a call.
It looks
like a
like
business opportunity for them.
Yeah.
Well, tell the guy on his
Greg Ondo.
Greg Ondo.
Ondo. Hey, Greg, make this happen.
Yeah.
Upvote.
Well, good. Yeah. He'll get right on that. It looks like you're out of the box, as in a lot of your synths are A to D converted. But do you also use virtual synths? Are you mixing in the box? Are you doing
I used to use a lot of virtual synths, and I don't anymore.
Okay.
And the reason for that is a friend of mine had a bunch of mixes he was using specific plugins with, and the company just stopped supporting the plugins.
Yeah.
So he opens up the mixes. The plugins don't work on the new version of the OS.
Mm-hmm.
So all his mixes are shot. He has to remix everything with some other plugins. And I realized, wow, if that happens to me with VST instruments, I'm screwed. So I said, I'm not using VST instruments anymore because of that reason. Safety factor on not losing my songs. So I was like, I'm going back to all hardware again. And I just started saving up money and started buying synths again.
Yeah, that is a brute force, pretty good way to go about it, because that really there's not much of an option. I mean, you can keep the MIDI data,
Yeah.
and you can pretty much save that forever, and you could print those synths as their own tracks,
Right.
stems. But beyond that, you're right. Like, software gets old and hardware keeps getting newer, and then you get screwed.
Yeah. I mean, my synths will never just, unless they need to be fixed, which you can bring it to, there's plenty of places out there that'll fix your synths for you.
Yeah.
But the company, if they stop supporting it, it's not going to stop working for my use.
Have you dabbled into any of the Roland cloud stuff?
No,
Because
I
that
hate the cloud stuff.
okay.
It's not my thing either.
Yeah. It
Subscriptions and the rest of that crap. Nah.
yeah, I I just was curious. I think that's sort of their answer, right? Is, hey, virtual synths will end up going away, but they have all these virtual synths of old synthesizers, the Junos and the D50s and stuff. And so they're like, well, if you need those sounds, they're right
Yeah,
here. You just give us your money all the time.
right.
Well, we know he doesn't need a Jupiter X, so
Right.
Yeah, this Jupiter X sounds amazing. The low end on it is just out of this world. This thing sounds, when I first started playing this thing, I fell over because it sounds that good. And the models on it, the Juno 106 model, the Jupiter 8 model, I mean, they're astounding. They sound phenomenal. I was actually, because I think at the time I still had a bunch of stuff that I did with the Artorias Jupiter 8. I'm like, So I would load up the Jupiter 8 software synth, load up the Jupiter 8 model on here, and adjust all of my settings visually on the Jupiter X to what was on the Jupiter 8 plugin. And it matched up just about perfectly. So I was able to convert a lot of my stuff that I use with the Jupiter 8 software.
oh, that's cool. So you're kind of manually importing your sounds
Yeah.
to.
I only had to make like a few little tweaks here and there where something wasn't quite exact, but it worked out really well. So now I just like the Arturia software. I've got the bundle. I have the last V collection, and I don't even think I'm even going to update it. I think I'm just done with soft synths altogether.
That's fair.
Done with them.
It's like the Mid-X thing, right? Like, we bought it, and a year later, nobody's supporting it. Wait a second.
I mean, when I bought this SSL A to D converter, I also bought an SSL MX4 audio card that went with it. I bought the card 2 years later. SSL stopped supporting it. They wouldn't make 64-bit drivers. I updated to the latest operating system of Windows. Card wouldn't work anymore. And I'm like, you guys just screwed me.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah, that's when I had to decide to go with the MADI, because the SSL card was a MADI card. So I was like, I'll just look for another MADI card so I can at least still use my converters. And that's what I did.
So you were saying you have two Behringer keyboards. I
Mhm.
remember when Behringer first came out with synths, and everybody was kind of like,
That's what I did too. Because everybody knows the shit quality of Behringer.
And then people started listening to what they sounded like, and they were very like, they knew that they could really piss off a community if they didn't do it right.
Right.
So it sort of seemed like they were listening, and they're like, oh no, not going to release it just yet. Oh, okay. Oh, is it good now? And what do you think?
The DeepMind 12 it's a Juno 106 on steroids. It is.
Okay.
It sounds phenomenal. It sounds great. I mean, it's all analog, digitally controlled, and it quite literally is a Juno 106 on steroids. It's almost the same exact setup as a Juno 106. You look at the sliders, the oscillators, and everything else, except you've got so much more MIDI functionality. You can sync the LFOs, you can sync them to time clock, you can choose different divisions of how they sync the LFO. There's the built-in effects from TC Electronics. I mean, the build quality, I don't know, because my modulation wheel now kind of sends out random information.
Yeah.
So I can't use that as an input device, so I just use the Jupiter X basically. But sound wise, it sounds great. I mean, it sounds. I debated buying like a rack, a DeepMind 12 rack, a second one, because it just sounds that good. The mono poly sounds fantastic. The output on it is a bit low. It's not a hot output, but it sounds great. It sounds huge. It sounds fat. It sounds like, and I've watched the comparisons between the Korg monopoly and the Behringer monopoly, and it's pretty much right on the money. So I can't complain. I mean, I'll probably be when the Behringer, in fact, I'm waiting for some money to come in, and then I'm going to call Sweetwater and put money down on the new Behringer UBXA
Okay.
and just pay for it in full. And when it gets in, ship it to me. Because it's not only is it an Oberheim clone, but it also has settings that you can set it up so that it sounds like an OB8,
Okay.
or it sounds like the OBXA, and I think there's one other. So it'll actually set it up so it sounds like each one of those synths. They're different quirks and stuff like that. It's duo timbral, so
Okay.
it's 2-part multi-timbral. It's not 8 voices; it's 16 voices.
Cool.
Having an OBXA, a 16 voice OBXA is just awesome. And it's got USB on it, so it's got USB MIDI. I'll have an editor. If I had the money to buy an actual Oberheim OBXA and choose between the two, I would probably still go with the Behringer.
Sure.
Wow. Okay.
It's just got more. It's got more. It
Yeah.
can do so much more. And from the sounds I've heard from it, it sounds like an Oberheim. It definitely sounds like an Oberheim. And I know that just from using my Matrix 1000 all the time and programming on that with a software editor. Like, you get to know that Oberheim sound.
Right.
And actually, it's one of the cool things I like about the Forte 7 is their oscillators are very Oberheim sounding.
Okay.
Like their saw waves and stuff like that. They have a very Oberheim sound. They're very thick, meaty. And
Fact.
so, yeah, definitely going to be getting that Behringer UBXA. I never thought I'd own a piece of Behringer anything in my lifetime.
Yeah.
I've always just kind of looked down upon them because it's always been garbage. But with the synths, they're hitting out of the park.
Well, and also, didn't they buy Midas?
I think so. I think that's why everything
And
has a
so
lot of Midas stuff included.
their preamps now are not terrible anymore. I
Yeah.
mean, they actually, I tell you what, if you're looking for, if anybody's asking you, hey, I want to build a studio,
Yeah.
and they want multiple channels, the cheapest preamp light pipe A to D to A converter out there is Behringer. I think Behringer makes it. It is like 8 mic pre inputs with a light pipe out, but it also has a light pipe in that also spits out 8 outputs. So
Nice.
if you've got light pipe, $300, and you got some Midas mic pre's and an A to D 8 in and out, and you can do as many of those together as you want as light pipes that you have in and out of your computer or card or whatever.
Midas
Yeah.
preamps are no joke.
Yeah. And they sound pretty good. Now, I don't know how long they last.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing.
Usually things like that, it's the power supply that they engineer as kind of the crappiest. And so if you don't mind replacing those, then they'll probably last a while. But
yeah, that's pretty cool.
I was listening to some of your stuff, and it sounds like maybe, and this is just my ears, do you track real drums, or do you
They're actually all programmed.
really?
Really?
Okay.
Yeah, I programmed all of them.
That's impressive.
That was one of my questions too. On the on the Doomsday album, you got a track there called Satan's Concubine, and I was like, what's going on? That's where I really noticed it. I was going, okay, because they're panned, there's nuance, and you don't know this, I'm a drummer.
Oh, okay.
And miking drums and doing that is an art form in itself. So,
Yes,
but
it
it had enough variation and nuance that I'm like, I gotta ask him about that. And Mike picked up on that too. So okay.
That's funny. I programmed them all. I used are you guys familiar with Superior Drummer?
No.
I'm not. Tell me about it.
The drum plugin. And as far as I can remember, George Massenberg did all the recording for the drums.
Okay, this
Um,
is sounding familiar.
yeah, there's different studio kit plugins you can get for the plugin.
Hmm.
Drums recorded at different studios. So I think the one I used was called the L Air plugin drum kit, and there's a mixer inside the plugin. But if you don't want to use their mixer and their EQs and stuff, you can send every channel out to a VST channel in
Hmm.
Cubase. So that's what I do. I just send them all out to VST channels Cubase, set the levels. They're as hot as possible coming out of the plugin into Cubase, but not clipping. And then I just use the Universal Audio plugins to mix everything.
Yeah, your stuff sounds like your kick drum is nice and tight and crunchy,
Punchy.
and yeah, a lot of the, I mean, just about everything. I was really impressed with the production value of your songs on, and that's listening on Spotify. So, and it still comes through. So whatever you're doing it right. I can hear
Yeah,
it.
all that Doomsday, the Apocalypse and Doomsday, almost everything is the Universal Audio API channel strip.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
Um, that's why it sounds as punchy as it does, because that channel strip
Hmm.
compressor is so punchy. I mean, I've used the SSL channel strip in the past, and I know a lot of people dig the SSL sound, but as soon as I started using that API channel strip, I was like, this is what I want to use. This sound is awesome.
It sounds good. Yeah,
Thanks.
you're nailing it.
yeah, and
Thanks,
I
man.
thought it was a high possibility of real drums because not only what I was hearing and that kind of they're kind of isolated in that one song for a bit, and I'm getting to hear them without everything else. But
Right.
the other thing was in each of those albums, the drum sound throughout each album is pretty consistent.
Yes.
So it sounds like if that was a band that recorded that, then and that brought me there too, going, well, the drums aren't, like when I do stuff, I could use totally different kit on a different track because I don't care. Because it's all
Right.
synth sampled, whatever. And that just led me there going, oh, it sounds like the same dude playing the same kit throughout the album. So
Yeah.
good job. That was pretty cool.
Well, what I did was I made like Apocalypse was probably the actually I don't remember because I wrote them all at the same time, like Apocalypse and Doomsday. So I don't know what I wrote first. But when I went to go mix everything, I got a track, made it as perfect as I could get it, and said, all right, this is good. This is how I want the rest of the album to sound. And
Okay.
then I would save every channel, save my kick drum channel, save my snare drum channel, everything as a preset. So when I moved on to the next song, all I had to do was just click on the channel,
compose the
load my
track.
presets, boom, 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 boom. All my levels are set, all the channel strips are set, and maybe tweak it here and there a tiny bit, and it's ready to go. Yeah, I could mix one song within, you know, 30 minutes, move on to the next one.
So in essence, the same drummer was using the same kit.
Yes. Yep.
So
Yeah.
Got
okay.
it.
That and it sounds like it too.
Yeah,
Um
like each album's even like a Doomsday should have the same exact sound as Apocalypse does. Should all sound exactly the same.
I was
I
going to
would
say flipping
they
through. Oh,
sound
go
like
ahead.
sister album siblings. But yeah, but I wanted to ask you about that on the there's Apocalypse and then Doomsday and this and that. I I was getting this vibe in my head that the Apocalypse album, is there an inspirational story for that? Because it sounds almost like a rock opera dramatic performance, and there's a visual element that I'm not getting by listening to it.
No, there was nothing really because, like I said, I wrote them all at one time, and I didn't really set up any theme or anything like that. I would just write one song, move on to the next one, write that one. It was nothing. There's no theme or anything going on. I mean, a lot of the songs, like "Evil Woman," "Satan's Concubine," are all about one specific ex-girlfriend, um,
Okay.
who
Does
turned
she
out to be a
know?
sociopath. She was shooting up cocaine,
Hmm.
to the point where it was actually making her psychotic. And I was helping her out with all of her expenses to the tune of like 14 to 15 grand. 2 years later, I found out she was just manipulating me the entire time for money while she was just getting strung out on shooting up cocaine. So a lot of those songs are about that,
Huh.
about her.
I also wrote a song about an ex-girlfriend, but has nothing to do with any of that.
No,
Yeah.
you sure?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I don't know.
Well,
Maybe it does.
Why, you had a similar situation?
No, not at all. No,
Was that the one you played me?
yeah, the one I wrote in high school called "Ode
Yeah.
to My Ex," and it's a jazz tune about you know, how she ripped
It's
out my
one of
heart.
these, yeah, but it's one of these songs that you could hear in the grocery store, and
Yeah.
if you're not paying attention, you
Mhm.
don't notice it. There's
That's
like
right.
this kind of little loungy jazz piece, but he's
That's
just
right.
tearing her a new one.
Yeah, it's a very Michael Bublé, but you know, yeah.
So it's a very
Or
big contrast between the feel of the lyrics and the feel of the music.
yeah, yeah, that's how I'm sneaky. I sneak in that way. See, before you know it, you got to kick me out. So
I'm scared to ask, but on the fire ritual stuff, is how much of the guitar is actual guitar?
Oh, it's all actual guitar.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah. That's all me playing.
can I nerd
Uh,
out and ask you about the so all right, you got your guitar in your lap, it's coming
mhm.
out at your quarter inch is plugged into what first? Is it an actual amp in the other room or is it
No, I have this little box. It's called the Motu. It's made by Motu, and it's called.
We love
Good look at it
Motu.
again.
Motu?
Oh, it's called the Z box. And basically, what it does is it emulates the circuitry of a guitar amplifier.
Okay.
So currently my preamps are the Black Audio Arturas. I have 16 channels of those for drums and shit, but they're great. They sound phenomenal. So I just
Yeah.
run the M box, the Z box, into the instrument, the high Z instrument input of the Artur, and that goes into the Line 6 Helix plugin.
Okay.
And I was able to find because I wanted to try to get close to that Tony Iommi Black Sabbath guitar tone.
Okay.
And luckily I went on Celestian's website, and somebody back in the day with the amp Tony Iommi used was a Laney supergroup. Everybody thinks it was an orange amp. It wasn't because of the Paranoid video. They think it was an orange amp, but at the time they filmed the Paranoid video, his amp got lost when they were on their way there.
That
So
was
the
just an
only
amp that they
amp was
scrounged
the
up.
house amp, and it was an
Yeah.
orange amp. So that's what he
Yeah.
had to use. But it was always a Laney supergroup. That's how he got that tone. So the Celestian website had IRs of the Laney supergroup cabinet. So I was able to load those into the Line 6 software. And I used the JCM 800 model, which breaks up real easily. So it kind of has kind of that Laney supergroup sound to it.
Cool.
And that's how I got that guitar tone. It's kind of like fuzzy, but not too fuzzy, you know.
I recognize that the song didn't sound like Black Sabbath, but if I had to put it in an era, I was like, oh man, that it's right there. That crunchiness and everything else. I was going, that is pretty cool.
That's the feel I went for for everything. The Fire Ritual stuff is very much inspired by old Black Sabbath.
So you're playing guitar, were you also playing bass on those?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay, because on Bought and Sold, there's what I'm going to call a slap bass. It sounds, I don't know if it was you sampled it and looped it or what, but I couldn't tell if that was real or synth or sampled bass or not. So I was going to put
Yeah,
it
it's a
out
real
there. It's
bass.
pretty cool. Okay.
It was just a cheap Sterling Music Man 5-string bass, like a $400 bass. But again, I ran that through I think it was the Universal Audio, the Ampeg SVT plugin. So you get like
Okay.
it's like the free one. So you get like two different cabinets to choose from, and I ran it through that, through compression and then the API channel strip, and that's the bass.
Very cool. And then what about like you on a couple of them kind of had a little wah wah fuzz box thing going on? Were those all in the box effects, or are you
Yeah,
throwing stuff
all
on the
part of the
floor?
Line 6 Helix plugin.
Okay.
That thing's amazing. And it
Okay,
reacts unlike a lot of guitar plugins. Like back in the day when you bought a Line 6, like say Pod, it wouldn't react to the dynamics you were playing at. So if you lowered your volume knob down, the gain wouldn't go down with it like on a real amp.
Right.
But the Line 6 Helix does do that. It's
Okay.
extremely dynamic. It'll react to your volume changes. So really, I mean, they really nailed it with the Line 6 Helix. It really does sound like a real amplifier, whatever you're choosing, whatever different cabinets models or amplifier models you choose. They really did a great job with it.
That's good to know because I haven't plugged a guitar in to stuff like that in years, mainly because I didn't like how I wasn't getting the reaction that I wanted.
Right. Yeah, you weren't a guitar.
So
you built.
still setting the amp up in the other room with the mic going in there set right against it to record it. And the problem is,
Yeah.
you got to nail the performance, and you got to
Yeah.
nail the way you want the effects and everything else, because it's kind of a one and done. So
It
that's
is
nice.
printed to tape.
Yeah. Yeah.
Printed to
And
digital
you got to nail it.
bytes.
Great thing with the just running direct with a Line 6 Helix is if you're recording with a real amp and you want to punch in and punch out, sometimes those crossfades don't quite work. You know, with when you're recording direct and you've got those crossfades, you don't hear them when you're running through the Line 6 Helix. You don't get that. You don't get any type of weird artifact with the crossfades when you're recording the Line 6 Helix. So you can do all sorts of punch-ins and punch-outs, and it plays right through it seamlessly.
That makes sense.
Is that in post, or you have a foot switch for that, like while you're recording, or?
No, I mean, I'll load up the sound that I want on the Helix, but it's all post. Like,
Okay.
if I turn off the Helix plugin, all you're going to hear is a clean guitar tone running through the Blackline Audio Artor, the direct
So
input.
you play the parts, trim the edges, and push them together, and have different. I got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So way back in the day, the very first sort of line impedance matching guitar emulator thing that I can remember. This was sort of Digidesign's big claim to fame for a second. They're like, hey, we have this thing called the 11 rack.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it was like you plug in here and you can different impedances for your, straight into it, and we'll emulate all these things. And it was a A to D converter, and it was also some sort of IO that would record directly in the Pro Tools, and a lot of people loved it.
Huh.
But since then, I feel like a lot of people have reinvented it and done a much better job. And I didn't know that Motu had just a box just for that, so that's pretty cool. I like Motu stuff.
I think it's like $40 or something. It's not expensive. I think it's even less than that.
Okay, we'll have to look.
I've never heard anything bad about their stuff. I've had a few different interfaces. One of I don't remember the name of it, but it was one of the original where they had the combo TRS XLR inputs, and you could turn phantom power on and off, and then it was USB, but it also had MIDI inputs. So it was just kind of like your all-in-one. I used it in a studio, but it would fit in a gig bag. It was kind of almost a half rack space, single rack tall half rack space, and that thing was great.
That's kind of their bread and butter. Them, and I think Focusrite is sort of doing that now. Just a little USB powered 2, 4, 6 channel whatever that just fits in your gig bag. Like even I want to say Steinberg makes some hardware. Of course, I'm a little gun shy to buy their hardware because I have a Mid-X that only lasted a year.
Exactly. That's why I've never bought Steinberg hardware. I've already been bitten.
Right. I don't want to date that girl again.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I am in the market for a new one, so I'm going to be looking at some Motu stuff, and I'm going to check out the RME stuff for the cards too.
Oh,
Yeah,
RME is
right.
really
It's
pricey.
Yeah,
it's
but
spendy, but
yeah,
I'll look at it great first. Well, eventually when I get everything set up, I'm gonna like you, Josh. I'm gonna have a lot of hardware that I want to all be plugged in all the time. So we'll see.
yeah. I mean, it's funny because my friend asked me, how do you incorporate your synths while you're sequencing? How do you monitor them? And they're plugged in all the time into it's an 8-channel stereo line mixer. It's a single rack space. That single rack space line mixer can chain into another Alesis line mixer. So I have 2 of those, which gives me 16 stereo inputs. The main outputs from the line mixer go to inputs 1 and 2 on the analog to digital converter.
Okay.
Which get monitored through the DSP mixer of the RME card. So it's 0 latency, real-time monitoring. I can monitor all my synths whenever I want to because they're just going through 2 channels. And then when I want to, track my synths from MIDI and track them to audio, I just patch them from the patch bay into one of the mic preamps and record. So it's a pretty simple setup, but it works really efficiently.
Well, that also lends to if somebody else brought in a piece of gear, it wouldn't be hard to add it to that setup.
No, it'd be very easy to, because you just patch it into the patch bay.
And where did you learn kind of your studio basics? Was it all out of necessity and just like, well, there's nobody here, or did you cut your teeth in a studio? Or
no, it was pretty much necessity. I just kind of learned it as I went. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think is the best way to learn, because you remember it easier that way.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like, oh crap, how do I do this? And then you teach yourself, and then you don't ever forget.
Right.
Yeah. It's fun.
Hands-on, best way to learn.
Fun stuff.
But yeah, I mean, Mike, if you're looking for audio interfaces, I mean, you want to record drums, live drums?
Well, I mean, eventually, yes.
Yeah.
But it mainly just to be able to plug in a guitar. I got a Telecaster, and that vocal mic,
and
then just a bunch of synthesizers, bunch of rack-mounted fun time.
You could look at like one of the smaller Apollos, like the 4-in 4-out Apollos, and they have the Unison mic pre's on them too. So the Unison mic pre's, you can load up like the Neve channel strips at a 1073 channel strip, and it will emulate a Neve preamp. If you hook up the API channel strip in their console, in their software console, you run through one of the Unison preamps, and it'll emulate the API preamp.
How does that play nice with Cubase? Because the newer versions of Cubase like to own your computer, where if I had Cubase running right now, I could not be on this call.
Yeah, they're not like, I think it's called multi-client. They can't run more than one driver at a time.
Right. Okay.
The console software, as far as I know, works perfectly fine with Cubase. I know plenty of people that use it with Cubase. So,
well, it would make sense if it did. But
like RME has their own DSP console. Universal Audio has their own DSP console as well.
Right. So it's doing all its emulation in the box. Well, I'm not in the computer, not using your computer's GPU, but in the IO box that's sitting outside of your computer.
Right.
And it's saying, hey, you need to be a Neve preamp right now. And so it's basically printing all that to whatever's coming through your input and laying it down to your track.
Cubase just sees it as an input.
That's right.
Okay. That makes sense.
Sees it as an input.
I was thinking there was more processing going on in the software in the computer box side, but that makes a lot more sense.
It's all being done inside the Apollo, because the Apollo has its own DSP in it. Like, yeah, you know about the U82 cards, the DSP cards and stuff. For process. Really? No, the U82, years ago, Universal Audio made their claim to fame with the UAD1 card, and it was their design to DigiDesign's DSP cards.
Yeah. Okay.
Except you could.
That's why I don't know, because I was on DigiDesign.
Oh yeah, no, you could use. Here's the thing: you could use the card with any software, any DAW. That's what. That's how they got their claim to fame, was you could use it in Cubase, Logic, Cakewalk, and all of their plugins that they released ran off of the DSP on the cards instead of your computer's DSP.
Yeah.
The U81 went out. They came out with the U82. Then they came out with the Apollos. And the Apollos have these DSP cards built into them. So like if you're running like the Neve channel strip on input and you want to get that Neve preamp sound live, it's going to use the DSP processing within the card. So you're going to have zero latency because it's not using your computer's DSP.
It's like a GPU for audio. Yeah.
Yep. 100%.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Okay, very cool. Yeah, no, I'll be looking into that and shopping. So
yeah, let's check them out.
So it sounds like you are down with DSP, like emulation, mic pre-emulation after the fact. Like you're okay with that. Do you have any mic pre's that you would run through for color before you go into your DAW? Like that you're like, man, I really love this Neve or this API that's hardware?
I don't have the Unison preamps. Like the Unison, to get the true emulation of like the Neve preamp or the API preamp, you need to have Universal Audio's Unison preamps, which are specifically tuned to work with the plugins.
Right.
So they're like ultra clean preamps.
Right.
I don't have that. I just have the
Okay.
the
You
SSL to
just have
D
a
converter.
SSL.
So
Yeah.
I just go through the Artors, the Black Lion Audio Artors for my mic pre's.
Well, it's working.
Yeah, they're great. They're great. Because I was curious about the Artors because Black Lion Audio makes the kind of like their API model, and then they
Yeah.
make their Neve model. And I asked them, I said, where do the Artors fit into this? Because how do they fit in between the AP, your API model and your Neve model? They said, well, the Artors are different. They're kind of the best of both worlds. The
Mhm.
front end is snappy and punchy like an API, while the back end of it gives you that fatness of the Neve. So they really are kind of best of both worlds, and they sound amazing.
Okay.
My only gripe about them is there's no output trim, so you can't drive the preamps if you wanted to like saturate
Yeah.
them.
Right.
Other than that, they're great.
Okay.
What a clean
Well,
signal. Yeah.
yeah, they do. They sound great. Like what you're producing is great. And I got sidetracked before. We were talking about how your songs sound like they all belong together.
Mm,
Do you do your own mastering or do you send it
yes.
off some? Okay.
Yeah, I do my own mastering.
Now, you mix everything and then you're like, okay, I'm going to do mastering tomorrow or some other day. Do you step away from it and then come back? Or is it
Yeah.
an iterative thing where you're like, okay, today I'm mastering. Let me go listen to it in my car. Nope, that's not what I want. And then you come back and change some things and go listen to it at a friend's house or whatever.
Yeah, generally that's what I'll do. I'll master it, bring it out to the car, give it a listen, um, take notes, what I need to tweak, and then come back and make those tweaks. Um, but generally, like with the fire ritual stuff, it's the same from song to song. Because
Right.
again, I mix the track, I just load up presets that I've saved from the original track that I mixed. So
Right.
it's very much the same from one to the next. So mastering that stuff was very easy because I really didn't have to tweak much from song to song when I was mastering it, except for maybe like the limiter to get the
Right.
same RMS levels. Other than that, no, it was pretty easy.
So when you master, are you using Cubase or are you going to a different program?
I use WaveLab.
Okay.
Yeah, I use WaveLab and I use Ozone.
Yeah.
Except for their limiter, I use the Universal Audio Precision Maximizer at the end of the chain because their limiter, I mean, their software just, to me, they make the best stuff on the market as far as plugins go. That's just my
Isotope
opinion.
is pretty badass. They
It's
make
great.
lots of, if you are ever in the film industry and you need to clean up dialogue and that kind of stuff, like post
Yeah,
stuff, they're like the only guys.
that's what I've heard. Like their
Yeah.
noise removal software is just like it's great.
In fact, for this show, I'm so overkill. But yeah, I just spent a couple $100 on the latest Isotope plug-in package just so that I could. I forgot what. Oh, no, it wasn't just for this show. It was for. They have a remix software where you can give it a song somebody else recorded left, right, and then you can say, let's get rid of the vocals now.
Yeah, it
Let's get rid of
separates
the
the stems.
drums. Yeah,
Mm.
and separate the stems.
Yeah, the
And
Ozone does that too.
it's impressive.
It is.
Yeah,
It works fine. I don't use it because like if I raise or lower the vocals, I can hear the other frequencies and the other
sure.
instruments being affected by it.
Yeah.
So I really don't really use it, but if it's not something that's like really super important, you can definitely get away with it.
Yeah. Yeah. What I was doing was not super important and it made that project easy. It ended up, instead of taking 30 hours, it took me like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So
yeah. It
yeah,
works well.
Yeah, their stuff is pretty great. Okay, so you're mastering your own stuff and you're doing it in WaveLab. And so do you have multiple sets of speakers that you can like A, B in your studio right
did.
now? Okay.
No, the only thing I have right now are a pair of KRK VXT8s.
Those are not bad.
Yeah, I mean I love them. And then I have the 10-inch KRK subwoofer that pairs with them. It's pretty awesome. I love it.
There's a whole world of, I would call it system optimization or room tuning Do you
Right.
have any external DSP that runs through with sort of an EQ for your room, or you're just like,
Yeah.
okay,
I've just gotten used to the way everything sounds in this room to the point
yeah,
where like I know what I have to tweak.
right,
Once the studio is set up, um, and that's built, that control room I definitely will be treating. I know there's I think they're called GIK. They make room acoustics treatment,
okay,
but basically you can send them the dimensions of your room and they'll tell you what you need, where it needs to be placed within the room. So
okay,
I'm going to go that route because it's a hell of a lot cheaper than paying an acoustician to come in here, take measurements of the room, check out the frequency, frequency analyzer, and then let me know where I need to put stuff. They can do it all, probably using algorithms and math, just by using the measurements of your room.
Well, and that's changed a lot over the years. There used to be like, hey, if you're going to have a studio or a control room, here's a golden ratio of how wide and how tall and how long your room should be.
Right.
And it turns out that golden ratio is not so great. But there are other ones that are a little better. The acousticians actually know the answers,
Yeah.
but for the most part, you you don't want a perfect room. A perfect room with zero bounces off
Resident.
of walls and
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
sounds like headphones in your ears, and it doesn't
Yeah.
sound right. And so what you want is a little bit of dead and a little bit of live, and you don't want buildup of room modes everywhere. And you can hopefully those people you're talking about are good at what they do.
I'm hoping.
We we typically, because we build lots of rooms and for mixing stuff at UT, and we are usually just throwing stuff up on the wall and try to make the walls not parallel. The moment that you can make your walls a little bit pushed out or whatever and not parallel, you
Right.
get rid of a ton of problems. And do you remember way back in the day when you were like, oh man, I really need to buy this sound stuff to put on my walls, this egg
Yeah.
crate looking stuff,
The RLX.
Orlux.
RLX, right?
Yeah.
And so then you were like, well, I can't afford that. And it's only an inch thick or 2 inches thick. And then some other people came out with other stuff and it was like 4 inches thick. Turns out probably the best stuff to soak up that is Corning 703 fiberglass insulation.
Heard
That's
that.
that's kind of the thing to use. We used to shoot a show. I used to work for a PBS station that used to shoot the show Austin City Limits, and
Mm.
in Studio 6B, the entire 10,000 square foot studio where we've had everybody from I don't know.
Willie
Everybody
Nelson.
has played. Yeah. Yeah. Willie Nelson was there first, and then Ray Charles and everybody has been there. And it is lined from floor to ceiling with Corning 703.
Hmm.
And
Wow.
it does a really good job of getting rid of some of the stuff. But it turns out, fiberglass kind of sucks. And
Yeah.
nobody wants to touch that. Nobody wants it in their studio. So another really good way to get rid of that is Roxel, if you're going to build it yourself. But there's also a ton of people, and there's really no difference except for marketing, and you're paying for the whatever name.
Yeah.
Just get the same stuff that you find in a big hall, right? Like you go to a university, we have them all over the place, and we just hang this. They're acoustic panels, and they're really not that expensive, and they're full of Roxol or some sort of absorbent thing, and they're actually already pulled over with the whatever fabric and stuff,
Yeah.
and they come with the stuff to hang on the wall, and you put enough of that around your control room or your studio, and you're pretty much soaking up any problem areas. Now, there's a ton of places on the internet where you can go around and be like, oh, how do I do this? How do I do that? But for the most part, it's just like, is it reverby in here? Okay. Throw up some things on the wall. Oh, okay. We're good. Good. If
Right.
you're a stickler about it, and you're like, oh, I really need it to be perfect or whatever, it's not gonna be. Like it's and when you get there, you're kind of like, oh, well, I could have just mixed on headphones. And so that's not what it's about. Like, and me being a guy who's had to tune so many movie theaters and so many mix stages and everything like that, and had to go in and make this PA sound good in this room or whatever. Like, ultimately, the battle with the acoustics of a room is you really got to just treat it as an instrument and kind of learn to love the instrument. So, yeah. But DSP to fix a couple of room modes is not a bad thing to do. Like, once you treat your walls,
I'm gonna treat the walls and look into the DSP too at the same time, and then have the best of both worlds, because I'm also concerned about, how bassy the room is, the low end.
Yeah.
Because the room I'm mixing right now, there's a ton of low end in it, so I have to my ears have learned to compensate for that, but I'd like to not have to do that.
Right. So I will say, I've been thinking this for a long time, and DigiDesign, or I guess Avid now, Pro Tools, has finally implemented it. If you buy their $5,000 Studio Matrix, the little 1RU, it's got 16 outputs on it. You can mix Atmos surround if you want to with it. But they have segmented a piece of that for DSP for just your speakers, for correcting for just your room, which is great, because usually the way most studios do it is they have an extra piece of gear which adds latency. Now, it's not much. It's like 0.9 milliseconds, depending on whatever you're going to use.
Right.
But why would you do that if you have tons of DSP in these boxes anyway? Can't you just give a little bit for your left-right speaker guys? And so I am surprised that I haven't seen the other big boys like the UADs and the RMEs and those guys follow suit with what Pro Tools has been doing, because it's kind of important for your control room speakers to be pretty close to right.
I'm sure they will. I'm sure UAD will come up with a solution. RME will get in there. Once that catches on, from Avid, and people will start talking about it, they're gonna go, oh, wow, we need to incorporate this, and they'll figure out some kind of room correction software and sell that as a plugin.
Right. And there's lots of people who make the room correction software, and they're like, okay, here's this really crappy little mic, and you can put it in your DAW, and just remember to turn this off whenever you export or something like that.
Right.
And it's sort of like, okay, but how do you know that microphone's right? And how do you know that you're putting it in the right spot? And so that part is where it's sort of useful to get an acoustician out there, because they know where to put the microphone and that their microphones are right. I've wrestled with that for years.
Are you offering to fly out, Mike?
I could. I don't know. My wife might not be too happy about it. I'd much more rather talk you through it than fly to New Jersey and do it for you.
There you go. Or if you move to Austin, he'll help you down here.
Yeah. If you move down here, all the cool kids live down here. So
I'd love to, but I once the studio's built, there's a slim chance I'll be moving anywhere else.
Yeah. Putting down your roots. So I hear what you're doing with guitar and synthesizers. Do you track drums? Have you tracked live sets before?
Only a few times.
Okay.
Only a few times. That'll be something fun, because it's I don't have a lot of experience doing that. I understand a lot of the principles, Yeah.
I will say it's one of the first things that I learned to do, and one of the most favorite things. I like to start with drums. And so is there a drum sound in your head from any produced album ever that you're like, that's the one I want to make? I want my drums to sound like that one.
Oh, well, in my personal opinion, all drums should sound like John Bonham.
Okay.
To me, the John Bonham drum sound is the perfect drum sound that has ever existed.
All right. Well, then you'll know that you only need 3 microphones, because evidently that's all they used.
Right. Yeah, I'm actually one of the things I am going to get for the studio once it's done is I am going to get the Ludwig Centennial kit, which
Okay.
is John Bonham kit. It's all the same shell sizes, everything. Pasty makes his cymbals still and the hi-hats. I'll probably get those, and I'll probably still close mic them anyways. I'll just mic them. I'm not going to mic them like Andy Johns did. I'll just mic them up like everybody else mics drums. And you have more options that way. You know, if I don't use them, I don't use them, but they're there if I need them.
I want to ask a question about when you're composing and making music. How do you, is there do you have a kind of cookie cutter or a list of things? Do you always start with drums first? Or is it just, I've got this thing in my head and I'm going to start with a melody, or how do you do it?
Yeah, basically I just start, I've got this thing in my head. Let me bust out the guitar, or I've got this synth line in my head. Let me bust out the synth. And then I just start from there. I got this cool bass line in my head. Let me lay it down. And then it just kind of snowballs from there. And then everything just starts coming out. It's like once I start, everything just starts happening.
And of all the stuff that you've produced, what of all the songs, is there one that still stands out that you like still listen to today and you're like, yeah, like I kicked ass on that one. That was a really good one.
All the fire ritual stuff I feel that way about, because I
Okay.
really worked hard on that to make it as perfect as I possibly could. And the fire ritual stuff, yeah, I feel that way about it. The Streets of Fire album, I feel that way about that. I'm actually going back through my old albums now with the new tools that I have, because they don't sound as good as Streets of Fire, and I'm remixing them, remastering them, and upload them again.
Cool.
Can you date some of those for me? Like when was, Apocalypse or Apocalypse and Doomsday? When did you put those out? Or when did you write those?
Those aren't even released yet. I don't even
Oh,
have album artwork yet. I did those like, kind of want to say like 3 months ago.
oh wow.
Wrote
Okay.
everything. I just sat down. I was literally writing and recording a song a day. Because part of my writing process is I record it at the same time. So as I'm writing it, I'm recording it.
Yeah.
All at the same time. So I did that in like a month and a half. I had like 20 songs. I'm like, wow, do I put out a double album, or do I split these up into two albums? I was like, nah, I'll split up into two albums, two 10-track albums.
It sounds like you do a lot of mainly recording. Do you play live anywhere ever, or
Not
is it
yet.
okay?
Fire ritual stuff, I'm working on it. I want to get that studio built so I can also use that as a rehearsal space for the fire ritual stuff. I'm looking for a couple guitar players, a bass player, and a drummer so they can do it live.
Okay.
And I'll probably I'll get myself a laptop and an audio interface. I'm not sure which interface yet. And I'm just gonna just run the guitar players through their own channels in Cubase through the Line 6 Helix, the bass player through the bass plugin that I use from Universal Audio, so I can get the same exact tones on the recording. I can get the same exact sound live.
Okay.
So pretty much they'll just be running direct, and then from the audio interface, we can go from there to direct boxes right into the house console and say, here you go.
Cool. So you're going to use Cubase live. That's all right. Neat.
Yeah.
So is it a conscious effort on your part when you're writing this, saying, I want to be able to play these live, and therefore the parts that I'm laying down and sequencing are not impossible to play?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, that would make sense.
Yeah, I mean, the fire ritual stuff is it's pretty basic. I mean, as far as the leads go and the songs, I'm just going to hand the lead guitar players to just learn it and improvise. You don't have to memorize your guitar solos. Just improvise the guitar solos.
Yeah.
Because that's, like Frank Zappa said, he improvised. His guitar solos were different every single night he played live because he just improvised everything. So I don't see a problem with that. I'll just tell him improvise everything.
I think that shows a maturity in the band politics arena, honestly.
Yeah. 100%.
Well, I want them to have fun too. Like, It's bad
Yeah.
enough. I'm going, you guys haven't been part of this writing process. I already wrote everything. Something with a drummer, improvise your fills or come up with your own fills and kind of make it fun. I'm gonna do the same thing with a bass player. Hey man, put in your own licks, add some tasty licks in there. Give me some of those cool like Geezer Butler licks that I would
Yeah.
throw in. And
You're going to come away with a slightly different live sound with
yeah,
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That'll be cool.
yeah,
Yeah, it'll be fun.
yeah. I think it'll give some people something different if they come out live. They're gonna hear something a little different.
I mean, it is so impossible to get your sound. It doesn't even matter like who you are. I remember our band went through this too. We would record something and we would write and record at the same time like you did. And then, okay, well, let's play it live now. Okay, so we'll go play live and I'll record it. I had multi-track in. Even having the multi-track live, I'd come back and we almost always sound like a different band live, even though we're the same guys, same instruments, same drums, same everything.
Same
We
song.
sounded different. Yeah. Same
Wow,
song.
was this just from improvisations?
It's just being able to do stuff in the studio that you can't do live. Like you're miking with a Neumann or something like that, and you're like close miking on a guitar. You can't do that on stage. You
Right.
just can't. So yeah, just all sorts of being able to whisper into a mic. Well, live you can kind of do it, but not really.
Well, that's exactly why I want to just replicate exactly what I did in the studio. That's why I want to use the Line 6 Helix for the guitars,
Heck
Line
yeah.
6 Helix, plug in for the bass, get the same exact sound live that I got in the studio. Because it's hard to do, but I'm like with the software these days, and I
Yeah.
embrace that. I'm like,
Yeah.
a lot of people are skeptical of it. I'm like, no, I embrace it. It'll be great.
It's going to be great.
It'll be great.
We touched on some microphones at one point, and you were turning us on to these new tube mics. Is any of that planned for the new studio space?
Yes. Those cathedral pipe mics, I'd like to get 2 of those. I'd like to get a matched pair. For room or overheads. Really, I imagine those things are going to sound good on everything. After hearing those vocal demos, I was just completely floored at how I had to email them and ask them, did you guys use EQ on this? Because they just sound so crisp and clean and clear and have this airy presence to them. They're like, nope, that's not EQ. There's no EQ. That's just the way that mic sounds.
Just how they sound.
And I was
Cool.
shocked. I was like, man, these things sound good.
So your plans for your studio, you're going to have a control room and a big live room and a couple of ISOs, or
yeah, I'm probably gonna put the ISOs in the live room.
okay.
And then the way I plan the ISOs out is have like a wall plate so I can run the microphones to the ISO booth, and then inside the same XLR connection to mic up the amps in the ISO booth. I want to do that, and then I also want a splitter so I can record a direct signal at the same time in case I want to reamp it or run it through the Line 6 Helix. I'm generally going to be trying to convince the guitar players as much as possible to use the Line 6 Helix, and hopefully spend little time with the ISO booth, because it's just so much easier to capture the performance.
Yeah.
And then dial in your guitar tone afterwards, rather than trying to capture that guitar tone in the moment and, during the performance. My other thought was lining 1/4-inch cabinet cables from the control room to the ISO booth, so that the guitar player, while he's plugged in the live room, is actually plugged into his amp head in the control booth. So I can make the tweaks to the amp and make it sound good, and the cabinets in the ISO booth.
Yeah.
So that was the other idea I thought of too, and I'll probably go with that idea, because it'll, while the guitar player is sitting out there saying, "Oh, my tone sounds great," like, dude, not through the mic and not in the control room, it might not.
Right.
I mean, so it might need to. I can hear what it sounds like, so it's easier for me to tweak your amp while I'm in the control room, tweak the head,
Right.
and get you a better sound. So I'm gonna go that route probably.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually.
Sounds like a good time.
Yeah, it should be
Yeah.
a lot of fun, man. I'm looking forward to it because I'm just looking forward to recording other bands and not doing my own stuff for a change.
Apocalypse and Doomsday are part of that, but I guess is it kind of a wait and see what happens? Future songs in that realm.
Yeah, I've already got a song written for and a couple songs started for a third album for the Fire Ritual stuff. So that's definitely gonna continue. Um, that and the Nebula Black stuff, the Halo Universe stuff, I'm pretty much done with it. Um, just because the label kind of ruined any type of passion for it for me. So they can go blow. They'll never probably never get a third album unless I happen to like have the passion to write it, and then they'll get it. So the Fire Ritual stuff and the synthwave, the Nebula Black stuff is going to be my main focus. And once the studio's done recording other bands, mixing their stuff, mastering it,
Where can somebody listen to the Nebula Black stuff?
they can go to bandcamp.com.
Okay.
And just search Nebula Black and all my releases up there. I think there's like 5 full albums and an EP.
Okay.
Really. Yeah, I started that back in like 2017.
So in your perfect world, this summer you're rocking in the new studio?
That's what I'm hoping. The construction on this house has been very slow. It started like 6 months ago, and they're still doing stuff. Originally, the construction was just supposed to be an expansion of the garage with the studio above that. So it's gonna be a 3-car garage. And there was supposed to be solar panels. So the whole reason the construction began in this house was just to install solar panels. But my stepfather, he bought the house for me and my brother to live in, and he decided he wants to put solar panels up, and decided to renovate the house at the same time. Well, the builder has had a hard time trying to find employees, so
Yep.
it's been going very slow. It's been going very slow. So I'm hoping by summertime the studio is actually done.
Well, me too. I want to see pictures when it's done.
If you ever thought about solar panels, he was actually very smart about it because the electric company judges the power you use within like a certain time frame of like a month. So they pick a month and they let you know, and this is the time we're going to do it. Well, what he did was he took 2 huge industrial heaters, and it was the winter time. Was it last winter? No, it wasn't. It was like sometime in spring it started. So he took these huge industrial heaters for that month and ran them in the basement nonstop. So our electric bill that month was like $2,000. So they're assuming our electric consumption is like $2,000 worth of electricity a month, when realistically it's only about 250. So once the solar panels will be up, we'll pretty much have free electricity from there on out.
Cool.
So that's how he figured it out. But that's a trick on a way to really get your electric bill down to 0, is take advantage of that time frame that they measure your electric use, run those fans from your house, and
go nuts and get a big bill so you can get a bigger system. Yeah.
Put your thumb on a scale a little bit, and then
Yep.
It's absurd. I don't know who they're to protect by doing that anyway. I should be able to put up as many solar panels as I want.
Right.
And I have issue with that, but whatever. When as far as they won't pay me any kind of wholesale price beyond zeroing out my bill.
Right.
And I'm like, really? Really?
The whole thing's ridiculous. That's why he's like, well, they want to play games. I'll play games. We're going to set up these fans in the basement. And...
Is there anything you want to ask us?
No, I think I asked you guys a bunch of stuff. What mic are you using?
Me? I got a Rhodes MK1. Is that what it is?
Yeah, yours is the little Rode mic that they make. That's a USB.
It's $100 mic.
Yeah,
and it's meant for podcasting and stuff. But man, Rode.
It's a Rode NT-USB Mini.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yep.
And what's the other mic?
Mine
Pretty
this
good.
thing right here that I'm talking
Yeah, it
to?
sounds pretty good.
Yeah, it's an old Audio Technica 4033.
Oh,
And
nice.
yeah, and it's way back in the day. We were looking at my band, I don't know, 10, 20 years ago, forever ago, a lifetime ago. We were looking for good vocal mics, and it was between a TLM 103 Neumann and this guy, and we couldn't hear the difference between the two. And so we brought home the 4033. Then I got a 4050, Audio Technica, just some pretty
They're
good
great
mics. And then eventually I succumbed to the Neumann
The Neumann
brand,
thing.
and I got myself a couple of TLM 103s, and I've got a bunch of mics, and I don't really have much of a studio anymore. And so
Right.
now, as kind of part of our shtick, I like to use a different mic every time.
Yeah, I was about to say if
You know what's funny is I thought that was an Audio Technica by the shape of it.
Yep,
I
old
thought it was
school
I
audio.
just didn't know which one.
Yeah, the 4033.
4033s are great mics.
Mm-hmm.
They sound
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, it's crazy for how cheap they are, and yeah, they sound really
Yeah.
good. I've seen a lot of people use them in a lot of different ways, and they're just a darn good mic.
Yeah. I can see this being a really good workhorse mic aside from just a vocal mic too.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. The large diaphragm, you can do a lot of things with that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, I got this on his recommendation because I needed a USB mic.
Yeah.
And I've been very happy with it. I don't really have anything to compare it against. I mean, if I was using an old school Phantom Powered, it'd be a AKG C3000, which was
those.
a good mic that we used as a vocal mic. You could switch the pattern on it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, I mean, that thing was not cheap when we got it. Maybe $500-600. That was expensive to me at the time. But
Well,
I still have that thing actually.
I'll
Nice.
tell you the other thing that's happening is, so this microphone is running into, I have an old Roland Octocapture, which Roland made these IO boxes a long time ago. And what's the first thing you do whenever you record audio into a computer? Like the very first thing that I ever did was for a drummer, like, hey, play that snare as loud as you can, and it would clip, and then you turn it down until it stops clipping, and you're like,
Right.
okay, and then you maybe turn it down just a little more because they always play louder.
Right.
And
Right.
you say hit it as hard as you can, and they always hit it a little bit harder in the song.
Yep.
So
Always.
I can feel your judgment, Mike.
I'm sorry.
I can feel it.
So Octocapture, they made other things too, but basically they had a thing called auto synths. And so it's got 8 XLR inputs, and you press the auto synths button, and it basically turns up all the preamps all the way. And then you just bang on your drums as loud as you can, every single one of them. And it basically
lowers it.
turns it down until it's not clipping anymore. So to set up a drummer with this thing takes like 30 seconds rather than 3 minutes of, all right, hit your tom. Okay.
I've heard of that before. All mic preamps should have that.
I know.
Like they should all have that. That's brilliant.
And Roland has the intellectual property, like they've got that
I'm sure.
patented, and they're just waiting for somebody to come, oh, you shouldn't have done that. We got it. Yeah.
Yeah. So here's a question, Mike. What is the modern day version of that Josh can put in his studio for drums?
Okay, the good news is Roland still makes audio interfaces. The bad news is I don't think they're going to have the number of inputs that you need.
Yeah.
And if I have to my gut is telling me RMA makes a microphone preamp called the Mixtasy, like ecstasy microphone or something like that. And I think that they have something very close to, if not the exact same thing as that auto synth. Like you just hit the thing and it auto judges where it needs to be. But man, they are expensive. And they're
very expensive.
They're just preamps. And it's just like, oh, did you need 8 preamps? Do you have $4,000?
Right.
No, I don't. I don't have $4,000.
Yeah.
Would you recommend him trying to find an old one of these?
So, oh yeah, if you need something like these are the reason I have it is the software that I use to tune rooms, that it's the one that they recommend. Now, it's long in the tooth and there hasn't been an end of life discussion about it. In fact, I wrote Roland, I emailed them recently and I was like, hey, when's this going to EOL? And they're like, there's no plans for that.
Huh.
But it's been around a long time.
Wow.
And so I would not be surprised. And this is just me. Roland's probably going to kick me in the nuts just for saying it. But I think they're probably going to end of life it in the next couple of years.
Huh.
But it is a workhorse and it's
And can you,
badass.
now, when you say end of life, I hear like more, but can you go buy one up brand new off the shelf?
Yeah.
Oh,
Right
you
now.
still can. Okay.
Oh, 100%. And they have a bigger brother to it that has like, I don't know, 12 XLR inputs or something like that. And the coolest thing about them is they all have SPDIF in and out. And so what? A lot of people do that and who gives a shit? But they let you use that as word clocking. So you can come out of one into the next one. And so instead of 12 inputs, now you have 24. And
Huh.
I don't know how far down that chain you can go, but
Yeah.
because those you can lock them together through the SPDIF, then you can essentially get more inputs that way. I mean, it's not exactly the right way to do it, but it works and it's fine.
Well,
Huh.
it'd work for your John Bonham drum set, but if you're doing stuff for outside people and they bring in the Neil Peart special,
Yeah.
you're going to be screwed. You're going to need the inputs.
Yeah.
I would stick with what you got. That A to D conversion and that MIDI stuff that you've got going, that's probably where you need to be to change ecosystems. You were talking about that earlier.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man, but that's the same problem that Mike Nimitz is talking about. Is the very first question you have to answer whenever you're talking about a sound card is, how many inputs do you ultimately need at once?
Right.
And so if you need a drum set, if you're ever going to record a drum set, well, you're talking at least 8 inputs, probably 10, 14, maybe 16, depending
Yeah.
on how big crazy the drum set is. And then did you want to track the whole band? Well, now you're
Right.
talking about 24 inputs maybe, or
Right.
or more, depending on how crazy the band is. So,
Yeah, I'm probably gonna stick with it.
you
I
know, like
probably will.
it's a crazy thing to think about it, but like at some point, you know, there's a reason people go to big studios, and that's because, well, I have this horn section, and I also have this, you know, drum set that I need 16 mics for, and you know, it's like, oh well,
Yeah.
that adds up pretty quick.
It
They have
does.
these little things all over the
Does
floor
real
called
quick.
direct boxes.
Which all
So-
take a channel. So
Yeah.
Exactly. What how much of all the gear that you're sitting around there is gonna make a life move to the new place?
All of it.
All of it. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not like
everything's
two
going.
separate, like here's my personal synth setup. No, okay. So that's got to go into that equation too. So
Yeah,
I'm going to agree
everything's
with
going.
Mike there. Keep with your MADI system, because the last thing you want to do, as opposed to changing geography, is change your ecosystem,
Yeah.
because you know you need to be on top of that, and you're familiar with it, and you know what works. You're just going to expand it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and the A to D converter, the SSL one, it's got 3 ADAT inputs and outputs on the back, so I could expand those channels. You know, and realistically, I could bring this up to like 48 inputs and
Sure.
outputs if I need to. So
And a lot of people make a
just
lot
stick
of
with it.
really cool light pipe A to D converters, you know, or mic pre's and stuff. So there's a lot of those out there.
Yeah, I've seen that. The mic
Yeah.
pre's with ADAT outputs on them,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
which is nice.
Yeah. So
Real
you've
nice.
got some choices.
Yeah. I probably am not changing ecosystems. I'll probably be buying some Beyer Dynamic mics for the drums, except for the kick drum. I found a oh god, it was a Loughton mic. What was it? It
Oh
was
yeah.
the LS208.
Okay.
And I heard that thing and I was like, this thing sounds great. It sounds really good. Like,
Yeah.
it's gotta sound good on kick. So I'm thinking either that or like just a year-old RE20 for kick drum because I heard a shootout with the RE20 and a bunch of different stuff. And I was
Yeah.
like, the RE20 sounded just way better to my ears than anything else.
Well,
Uh,
it's a dynamic mic that's it's for radio, right? It's for radio
yeah,
personalities and they're always beating the mic, and so
yeah,
it's used to that kind of stuff. So
yeah.
it is a great mic for that. Of course, I hadn't been miking drums for my band in 20 years, but the one that we loved was the AKG D112, that little egg mic,
Right.
that's like
It's like a little bullet.
made
Yeah.
for kick drums. Um, I've never really been disappointed with it.
Yeah, I've got one of those. I bought one of those specifically for like years ago for when I was gonna put a studio together. I bought the D112 and I bought like 3 of the Sennheiser 421s in
Yep.
anticipation for when I eventually got a studio.
Yeah.
But I heard the Beyer Dynamic, the TDG57,
Yeah.
tiny little condenser mics, and they've got a
Mhm.
gooseneck. And I'm
Yeah.
like, wow, that'd be so much easier to set. And then it just clips right onto the tom. I'm thinking that would be so much, and they sounded great. I mean,
Yeah.
a condenser on a drum is almost unheard of but these things could take the sound pressure levels.
Yeah.
And I'll
Yeah.
get a bigger frequency response, easier to set up. So I'll probably grab some of those. And I think they're like $150 a piece. They're not expensive.
I have not heard Beyer Dynamics microphones, but I will tell you, I have a set of their headphones.
Yeah.
And they are the best sounding headphones I've ever put on my ears. And they were a little expensive at the time, but here's the thing is they're probably 25 years old, a DT 150s. And then I run into a sound engineer over here at the radio station who he does musical acts like every day. People coming through Austin or whatever, and they do a live set or whatever. And he's doing this all the time. And I look in his studio, and he's got some DT 150s, and I'm like, what do you think of those? And he's like, they're the best ever. And
Really?
yeah, he's like, I'm never going back to anything else. These are great. And I agree with him. The
They
Beyer
still make
Dynamic. Oh yeah. That's the cool thing is they're
DT150s?
25 years old and they still make them and they still cost the same and they're still great.
I gotta look those up because I bought a pair of DT 770s, but I never knew about the 150s.
The 770s are good. The DT 180s are also good, but the 150s were the ones that I went home with because they just, the low end and everything about it was just like, wow, this is great.
Nice, nice. Yeah,
How did the coating on your ear pads not fall apart after 25 years?
So well, actually, that's why I'm wearing in-ear monitors right now is because as much as I love them,
Okay.
the wife is not a fan of all the little black bits that it leaves around my ears.
Right.
Okay. Because when you and I started this, I pulled out my AKGs and they just freaking black dandruff everywhere. And I was going, oh, well, let me grab these Sonys. Black dandruff everywhere. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So okay.
Funny.
That's what I was wondering. I was like, if they took care of that problem,
that's what I like about
super
these.
sold.
These are like
fabric.
I don't know if you
fabric.
can see it. Fabric.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Padding. Yeah.
I will say this, years ago, probably 10, 15 years ago, but like definitely 10 years after I bought the headphones, there's like a little piece on the top of it that was starting to fall apart, or there was one piece and I called them. I was like, hey guys, how do I get another one of these? What's the replacement part or whatever? They just sent it to me free of charge. Wow. They're like, don't worry about it. Here you go.
Nice.
And so maybe if I call them and ask them about the ear pads, they'll do the same thing. But I mean, so this is the other thing that we do at UT is I've repaired a lot of headphones, a lot of the Sony 7056s or the one that everybody loves.
MDRs.
Yeah, the MDRs. And those pads wear out all the time and they're $20. You can type it in on Amazon and just get replacement pads for $20. So I'm sure it's not that bad.
Nice.
Yeah. The headphones are great. I love those things.
I'm gonna look those up tonight.
Yeah.
Definitely. Because I'm gonna need to get at least 4 pairs of headphones to the studio because all I have is the headphones I use. So I'll look up the DT150, see how much they cost, and see if it's
Yeah,
you know
they're great. The way that they hook into the wire that hooks into it,
yeah
it like hooks in and then there's a screw. And so it's like really sturdy. And even
good.
if somebody yanked it out, right?
Yeah.
You could just resolder it together. Like the way they built it, they knew that there's going to be some dumbass musicians walking around and like just, dog collar themselves, and it's
Well, I think
like,
we've all done that. You forget they're on your head, and you get
yeah,
up to go somewhere, and then you're, oh,
yeah,
what's
you're just,
going on? And then you're going, wait, no, I'm the
yeah,
dumbass.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, you just hope that it messes up your headphones and not the jack to the really expensive thing it's plugged into.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
true.
Yeah, I have to figure out some kind of strain relief there for whatever it's plugged into.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to get. What we do there is
Or zip time.
there. Yeah, so they sell Velcro straps for
Yeah.
cables, and then you can usually buy a little strain relief. For usually it's the back of racks, right? For like network closets or whatever,
Oh
and
yeah.
just put that right off of your equipment, whatever it's rack mounted to, and just Velcro tie it there so that they're pulling on that instead of what it's plugged into.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a real good
Yeah.
idea. Never thought of that.
Save your sanity.
Well, this has been really fun. Thanks for letting us talk you into buying a webcam and doing
Yeah, it's
all
just
that.
a good time, man. Oh, and the only reason I put this upside down, because normally I see people do that with non-tube mics, and I kind of
Sure.
crack up. The only reason I did this was the whole purpose was I'd actually talked to someone. They were like, when that tube heats up, heat rises and it rises into the diaphragm of the mic.
Oh,
So with tube mics, flip them upside down, you'll get a longer life out of your mic. Diaphragm won't heat up. It won't get damaged in any way. Even if it's a tiny bit of heat that hits it, it can still do something. And
huh.
with tube mics, I flip them upside down for that reason.
That's cool. That is that's a trick that I didn't know.
I
Yeah, I thought it was just to look.
and you're like, up, it's upside down. I'm like, yeah.
I'd
That
seen
sounds
people
great.
do that before, but I just assumed that it was, preference, of
Yeah.
whatever the hell you wanted to do. But that actually makes a lot of sense. And the next
For tube mics, because you don't need it with non-tube mic. When I see
Right.
people hang non-tube mics upside down, I giggle because I'm like, you don't need to.
Right. They
Cool.
think they're
We do
being
it.
professional or whatever, but you can always tell
Right.
because any logo or identification on the mic is made to be read right side up. And if that means putting the mic upside down, that's the way they
There you
expect it to
go.
be hung. So
See,
There you go.
that's how we
That's
know.
funny. Yeah, this was fun, guys. I dug it.
no, I
Yeah.
appreciate your time. We had a little coordination, but it all worked out in the end. And it's great.
Yeah.
And I love seeing other people's stuff because there's a lot of overlap in how you get into it and in your learning experience. But a lot of my assumptions of stuff was totally wrong. And you have, apart from owning a Juno 106, you have stuff that I've never even touched. So that's really, really cool.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Yeah, keep doing what you're doing. It sounds great.
man.
Your secret sauce is working. So
Cool.
keep it up.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
I never really get like, other opinions from other guys that do audio or have, a lot of experience doing it. It's usually just from listeners. So I never get that second opinion on, how does this mix sound? How does this master sound? I never really get that. So it's good hearing that.
Yeah, there's definitely a cohesion with your stuff that for me at least, it was evident. And that's also why I went to thinking you had a actual drummer in the band because the drums were consistent and the mixes were consistent and the bass and all this stuff. And so that's really cool to learn how you were able to do that within your ecosystem. And I'd never ever thought about getting all your settings for something down and then just using those on the other tracks in the album because at the end of the day you mastered one song and then you've mastered the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah, just you're basically creating a template. for all the
Yep.
rest of your songs for that album.
It's an elegant solution. I salute you, sir.
Thanks, man. That's how, I mean, once I get the studio built and I have bands come in, that's how I'm going to approach their stuff too. I'm going to do it the same exact way. I'm going to get one of their songs down, nail it, and then just create a template and apply it to the rest of their tracks.
And tweak as needed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And those
seems
songs
like a
will
plan.
sound consistent from one to the next.
Perfect. Okay.
Cool.
Well, it was great talking to you, Josh. We'll definitely have to check in with you after a period of time and the studio
Cool.
is up and running. And I look forward to that.
I'd love
Me
that.
too.
Man.
Cool.
Thanks again. We'll see you
All right,
later.
guys. I'll
Thank
see
you.
you later.
My son.